Today I'm going to talk to you about building a business architecture, which is a way of structuring your technology around the outcomes that you want to achieve for your business and for your customers. And in order to ensure you can get both great results fast, but also sustain that architecture in the future, I believe it's really important that you approach it from the center out. And this means avoiding some all too common mistakes that I see enterprises engage in when they approach their business architectures. So, what is an optimal customer experience? Um, I think any of us had a previous experience of, let's say, contacting a customer service center on the phone and going through various prompts that lead you nowhere, automated responses that don't make sense. Or how many times have you found yourself lost in a web store trying to find what you need, comparing prices, looking for deals, or looking for that discount code? Why are customer experiences complicated, disconnected, and confusing at times? So these are some of the questions that I will try to answer as we walk through the presentation today. So to get us going, um, let's start with an example. And imagine you are at home shopping for a, let's say, specific t-shirt. You are not able to find it, so you call the customer service and you explain everything, and they talk you through what needs to be input into the search so that you can get to the item. And maybe it's a specific item number that you need to find this t-shirt on the website. Not exactly an amazing experience. So you go through the motions, and you scribble down on a piece of paper that magic item number that you need. So, but then you realize that you are actually late for a doctor appointment. So you run out of the house, and you get there, and now you're sitting in the waiting room, and midway through this waiting period, you're like, okay, why not? Let's just go online. You pull out your phone, and let's complete this purchase. And as you pull your phone and pull up the website, or maybe you have an app for that particular web store, you realize that you forgot that item number on a piece of paper at home. So now you're starting all over again, and you're like, okay, so there's the chat window here. Maybe I can chat with customer support right on my phone, and they can get me where I need to be. So you key in the details, and they are asking you the same questions over and over again. Name, location, color, type of product, t-shirt, this, that. So finally, like through this chat, you figure out what you need. They give you that same item number that you need, but then your time is up, so you need to go and see the doctor. So you put the phone back in your pocket and go and see the doctor. And at that moment, the customer service chat basically goes into the background. You forget about it. But you know the item number is still there probably in the chat. So then you're done with your appointment, and you go back home, and you're like, okay, so let's finally finish this. I really want the t-shirt. And you pull out your phone, and guess what? The chat expired. So the number is not there. The piece of paper with the number is lost. Back to square one. You're frustrated. You give up. You abandon that shopping experience. You take your business elsewhere. Um, Could we call it a typical retail e-com customer journey with siloed channels? Probably. And has that ever happened to you? Maybe not, but there are a lot of people who can relate to this in some form or fashion. So let's identify the channels and basically break the entire customer journey in this example into what I call micro journeys. So let's talk about the channels first. So there was a desktop website. There was a phone call made to the customer service. Then there was either a mobile app or just a mobile version of the website with a chatbot, and a chatbot that probably connected you to a live agent online that you were chatting with. So these are some of the examples of channels. Um, Next, let's pick up a couple of micro journey experiences that we observed here. One is desktop website to the phone. You picked up the phone and you called the customer service. So that's one. Next one, chatbot. Again, there was customer service involved, but then there was an online chat from your phone. So the question comes, how can we glue the channels to micro journeys, to corporate systems, to customers, and to employees within your organization? The answer is we need a new way of doing it. And it's probably the answer is on the surface as well, but let's walk through it step by step. So first of all, let's pull up some of the channels. There was a customer service call center, there was a mobile app, customer service chat, and a website. And the first mistake is starting in a channel. You end up embedding your business and process logic in each channel separately. Basically, you're hard coding it into the channel. So your customer service contact center probably has its own software with its own business logic. Then there is the chatbot that has its own business logic, and the website, of course. How do you harmonize it? How can you connect all of them? So, what happens is traditionally you are creating those walls, silos between your channels. And every time you make a change, you have to make it in multiple places. The second mistake, you are starting from the bottom. Systems, databases, mainframes, ERPs, even cloud systems. At the end of the day, they are all siloed products with a lot of complexity. So these disconnected experiences are hard and expensive to change. And the larger you become, the harder and more expensive it gets. So the center out architecture starts with the customer in the center. And important are the outcomes. So, what does that customer actually want to achieve in your web store? And what connects the customer with the outcomes? It is the journey. So, now let's talk about the customer journey in detail. So, let's try to separate the business logic from the actual channels. And basically, we are going to go through an exercise of mapping those micro journeys to the business logic stages. So, like stage 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on my slide. So, business rules should include things like corporate policies, regulations, compliance, and think of stages as basically milestones that have to be achieved to get the work done in a specific microjourney. So they are important because they create common language for all process participants. So the idea is to take out the business logic, standardize it, and centralize it so that it's not dependent on a specific hard code that's set up in a channel or a backend system. So each milestone will have a set of steps. And now that we have those micro journeys defined and we have the business logic separated, like the question is, where do we put it? So where does this information, do these rules reside? Let's call it the brain. So these are some of the examples of things that can occur in the brain. And as you know, human brain, for example, is very complex. So can the business brain can be also very, very complex. And the idea is that various systems that you have in your organizations, they have their own intelligence. So what's important for that brain is to act as an arbitrator, pulling all intelligence together for better customer and better business outcomes. So the key value of having the brain is a consistent application of business rules and business intelligence across all channels. So the brain needs to be auditable. There are two benefits to it. First, provides data for continuous improvement. So the what was discussed by Vladimir was very interesting because the brain can actually provide detail to data analytics and predictive and AI and machine learning about what happens with your customers. And coming back to the auditable point, B, it creates an audit trail to ensure compliance because you're being checked by the government authorities, you're being checked by probably independent auditors. So you have to have that audit trail of the decisions that were made by the brain. So how can this brain be implemented? So there are various products available off the shelf that support this kind of architecture, but you can also choose a different route and build it in-house. So various ways. Now, you can see like 5 examples here. Business rules. So basically, this is a standard common set of business rules. The brain can also guide your customer service. So if you're making a call to the contact center, it's no longer a disconnected call. There was a handover made from the website, for example, into the contact center. So they have the context. So they can help you better and quicker. The brain can have natural language processing built in to read through customer emails or maybe even through the chat and give advice to the customer service rep on the best next action that they can take to speed up the customer interaction and give them the right thing. It can have augmented reality built in as well. It can have predictive and adaptive analytics to help make the right decisions or to even change the decisions on the fly. So, various ways. So, we went over some of the key components of that center out business architecture. Now, let's try to put it all together and let's think about the steps that we can take to implement that kind of business architecture. So, 5 key steps. Start with the brain. That's obvious. You got to study your current set of business rules, compliance regulations, et cetera, and do process discovery on your existing setup. And then come up with a set of design business rules, build analytics that you need to support those decisions, and build decision-making trees. So that's step two. Map out your micro journeys. So you gotta have a really clear vision on how you interact with your customers, how customers interact with you, what happens. So that means a lot of discovery work, documenting those customer journeys, linking them to specific outcomes because we are focused on the outcomes. And walking backwards when you are doing this customer journey mapping because you have to break it down into steps. Connect to the channels. So in my example, I had 4 different channels, but in reality, there are a lot of other different channels involved. So you got to connect the brain to those channels. And you could use common APIs. That's a great example of that. And in fact, there is this concept of digital experience API that basically replicates the internal logic out to the customer facing technology. So if, let's say, a field or even a set of new steps is added to the brain, you don't have to manually add the same field to every channel. Digital Experience API informs the channel that will in turn adjust to accommodate the new logic. Connect to the systems. So backend systems, interfacing with corporate systems to pull the necessary data. And there has to be an abstraction layer built in that basically provides an easy way for the brain to interchangeably communicate with various systems and makes the brain more abstract, more independent from what happens in the backend. So traditional approach is to embed data lookup directly into the process. That leads to creation of technology process and not true business processes. So every time you want to make a change to your systems, you have to make a change to your business process, which creates interruption. A good practice is to have that virtualization layer. It manages the complexity of upstream systems and provides relevant data to the brain. And another great advantage of that virtualization layer is that it can predict the data that's needed and create more responsive, faster experience for the customers. Number 5, architect to scale. So you got to start small and then build so that you have future-proof growth. And you got to architect with scale in mind. So I like to use a concept of a layer cake to architect to scale, where the bottom has common definitions. A layer above might capture variation, let's say on a regional basis, Europe, Americas, APAC. A layer above that will capture product or business unit variations, merchandising, logistics, supply chain, etc., etc. So you are looking at this layered cake, and each customer essentially gets a slice of that cake. So every time they interact with you, they interact with a slice. And the key is that the bottom layer, where your brain is, the logic layer, is not repeated in upper layers. So let's talk about the benefits. When customers implement center out, they see the benefits of it usually right away. And the numbers that I have here are actually real numbers from some of the customers I worked with previously when I was with PwC in US and in Europe. And in fact, back at PwC, when I talked to my customers, I was often told, we have thousands of business processes. So there's huge complexity. And because there was this notion that consultant is coming in and like, what do they know? How complex they are? How can they really help us? Because there's so much institutional knowledge that was collected throughout the years. But if you step back from it, you realize that most of these thousands of processes are the same process that just has regional or local variations. I call them flavors. So historically, we manage this variation by building customization with duplicated and complicated business logic and systems, which in turn led to slow response and mistakes. And over time, it becomes really expensive. So if you implement center out, then you have a way to really standardize how you move from one channel to another, create a very fluid customer journey experience, keep your costs down, and hit those outcomes for your customer. So, one stat right in the middle that I want to draw your attention to is 88%. So 88% cost decrease for the company. That's quite amazing. But what do you do with it? So the reduction can actually result in reallocation of the staff of your employees that were previously focused on the back-end support to the front-end customer-facing areas, which in turn can drive your sales and revenue up. So it's a win-win. Thank you.